Now that we have the majority of the base created, we can work on pulling out the smaller details. Make sure symmetry is turned on in the Z-axis with the radial count set to 2. Alt-paint the 6 vertical rows and use QMesh with the target of single poly. Control-click with the gizmo to mask everything except the selected polygroup. With local symmetry turned on, you can scale and rotate to better shape the mesh. You can press Y to switch to the transpose line if needed. The transpose line is still very useful, and I often switch between the gizmo and the transpose line. The gizmo is definitely my go-to, but when I need more refined movements, I will drag out a long transpose line and dial in the rotation, scale, or movements. Another reason I use the transpose line is for quick extrusions and insets. I also use the transpose line as a measuring tool. So for the next part, we can grab the star from a new tool and bring up the gizmo to select a cylinder 3D. Delete half the cylinder and press Group by Normals to help ZRemesher locate the edges we want to keep. Press Same with Keep Groups on and the Smooth Group slider set to 0 for the ZRemesher settings. Since the bottom edges need to be 6, switch to half and run ZRemesher again. Select the front polygroups and delete hidden. Now we can start collapsing edges to clean up the topology. Throughout the course of this video, you will see me start out with a new tool. For me, it's a cleaner way to work when working on very complex models. You don't have to go to solo mode to isolate the part you're working on. You start out in the middle of the world, which helps with symmetry, and your subtool list is clean. It's sort of like having 2 identical garages and you're repairing something like an engine. In the first garage, your working garage, you have your engine all disassembled on the table and each part needs to be cleaned and repaired. The second garage has the same space and tools, but the difference being a clean table to repair and clean the parts. Once you're done, you walk the part back to the first garage for assembly. That's essentially how I work in ZBrush. It helps me focus on one part without being distracted by the complexity of the entire model. Now that we have the topology set, we can QMesh all polygons to give it some thickness. Next, we will be splitting the point. You may have to adjust the verts so you can split the point a little bit larger. Slide the edges at the bottom as evenly as possible to help bridge it to the base later on. After QMeshing the polys down, we can bring the new tool back into our working tool. In the subtool palette, click on Append and select the tool we were working on. Alt-clicking any part in the viewport will also select that part in the subtool list. Then click on Unify. Unify is located in the tool palette under the Deformation subpalette. Unify essentially positions the selected subtool in the middle of the world and at the same time scales the model to the XYZ size of 2 units. Now you can scale, rotate, and move the piece into position. If you press the thumbtack icon in the gizmo, after moving the piece, the gizmo will snap back to the original position. This is useful if you want to rotate from the center of the canvas. In this case, I duplicated the model and rotated it 180 degrees. You can merge the 2 subtools when they are in position. Set the symmetry to Z and the radial count to 2. Alt-move the gizmo over the mesh and remember to turn off the thumbtack icon. Do some final adjustments of rotating and scaling it into position. Once you're happy with it, you can merge it with the base subtool. Add 2 edge loops to match the base. Then you can select QMesh with Flat Island as the target and see how it looks. If it's off a little bit, you can Control-click the model to unmask it and adjust the height. Now when you QMesh, it should look correct. When modeling this loose and free, there is always going to be some back and forth in the adjustments for the scale and proportion. Now that the piece is bridged, we can turn on dynamic subdivisions and use the Z-Modeler brush to crease the edges to continue the hard edge flow we created with the base. For this section, I used edge loop partial for the target because I wanted to have more say in where the creasing stops, even if it means more clicks. Edge loop complete is recommended when edge flow is predictable, whereas edge loop partial is when you need more control of the direction when poles are involved. QMesh can be great for moving targeted polys. Click to start the extrusion, then holding down Shift will transition you into a move operation. It's really handy for making quick edits to your model.